The Spanish Civil War, the great rehearsal of World War II. In this world, no major event occurs by chance or coincidence. There must be a chain reaction that builds up the earth into a mountain and the sand into a tower. World War II was a classic example of this. In terms of its conception, something that's often overlooked. It's the foreplay that's the real kicker. For example, the Spanish Civil War, on the eve of World War II, was a dress rehearsal for the World War II drama. Spain has a glorious ancient history, of which it can be very proud. In the late Middle Ages, Spain developed into a global empire. The sphere of influence almost covers the Iberian Peninsula, colonies in Central America, South America, the Caribbean and the Philippines in Asia. To date, 7.8% of the world's population is Spanish-speaking, but unfortunately, in the 16th century, the Spanish Armada in England at the Battle of Graveland, after his defeat by the British Navy, he faded away, especially in the 17th century in America-Spain War. After losing the war, the Spanish Empire declined even further. By the time of the Spanish Civil War, it had already been removed from the club of great powers. After the Civil War, Spain was too devastated and reconstructed to openly participate in World War II. So Spain was the only fascist country in World War II that wasn't there when it shouldn't have been. And, of course, little sibling, Portugal was formally independent, culturally the same as Big Brother Spain. The choices are naturally aligned. In fact, Spain was not absent from World War II but was in the mainstream. Misplaced time gap early staging. This is the Spanish Civil War, a miniature world war, because this civil war was no longer limited to internal strife. In essence, it has become internationalized and is clearly divided into distinct groups. The image of the Axis and allied blocs is very much in shadow and very much alive. The Spanish Civil War, which took place from July 17, 1936 to April 1, 1939, lasted nearly 3 years. It was an internal war in the Second Republic of Spain. The war was fought by the President of the Republic, Manuel Azaña, the Republican government forces led by the left-wing alliance with the Spanish Popular Front against the fascist warlord Francisco Franco, the Spanish National Army, and right-wing groups like the Phalangists. The left wing was supported by the Soviet Union, Mexico, and the International Column. The right wing was supported by Nazi Germany, Italy, and Portugal. This civil war was caused by a clash of ideologies in Spain and the war between the Axis group and communism. However, due to the poor organization of the era, it was difficult to coordinate a response. The National Army, which was very disciplined and very strong, they were losing the civil war. At the beginning of the Civil War, Franco led, the National Army had about 450,000 infantrymen, 350 warplanes, and 200 artillery pieces. In contrast, the strength of the Republican Army is about 600,000 infantry, 600 planes, and 290 guns. The Republican Army consisted mainly of peasants and workers loyal to the Republic. Clearly a peasant army with little professionalism in its military culture. Initially, the major European powers signed a non-intervention pact, but Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy went back on their word. They violated that agreement by brazenly and aggressively supporting the rebels. July 17, 1936, the military governor of the Spanish colony of Morocco, General Francisco Franco launched a coup, attempted overthrow of the Republican government, though the coup seemed to be going smoothly at first, but a strong counterattack by the government caused the coup to collapse quickly. The coup led to great unrest and chaos throughout the country. Clashes between government forces and rebels escalated rapidly. As the coup fails, civil war breaks out. The armies of both sides fought fiercely across the country. The cities and the countryside were in chaos. One of the hallmarks of the civil war was the rise of various local warlords who created a situation of fragmentation. The civil war had serious consequences for the Spanish people, with at least 500,000 dead. Many families are still searching for the remains of their loved ones. The war also forced many scientists, literary figures, and artists into exile. It also had a disastrous effect on the Spanish economy. Franco was a career officer from the Section 1st, 1912. He was sent to the colony of Western Morocco to fight in the colonial war. He grew up to be an elite cavalry captain. 2nd, 1934, Franco was promoted to Army Chief of Staff to lead the suppressing the uprising in Asturias. 3rd, 1936, after the left-wing government came to power, Franco was transferred to the Canary Islands, were seen as a kind of exile. Before the outbreak of civil war, Franco was sent to the colony of Morocco. During this time, he developed close ties with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, received weapons and other aid. This aid continued through the Spanish Civil War. This war was basically a regular rebel army armed to the teeth. It's a battle between the government troops, the militia, who have just picked up their guns, the best of the best, the worst of the worst, in terms of professionalism, and the best of the worst. After the war, all sections of the Spanish people responded to the call of the left-wing Popular Front, take up arms in defense of the Republic. Rebellions in Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, and other major cities were quickly quelled, but the IRA only controlled Andalusia in the south and the northern provinces of Galicia and Navarre. Franco's right-wing National Army took advantage of the government's panic, occupied the colony Western Morocco, Canary Islands, Balearic Islands, and northern and southwestern provinces of metropolitan Spain. They were trying to take over the country by attacking the capital, Madrid, from the north and the south. A town called Belchite in the province of Zaragoza, in the autonomous community of Aragon, Spain, with a total area of 274 square kilometers and a total population of 1,612 in 2001. Population density 6 people per square kilometers. Strangely enough, the town is still in ruins. It's said to have been the scene of a terrible battle during the Civil War, so Franco ordered a massacre. The result was a never-ending barrage of artillery. Afterwards, Franco ordered that the wreckage be preserved as a living museum to intimidate those who dared to disobey. This war was a testing ground for new weapons and creative methods of warfare. During the Spanish Civil War, new weapons and tactics emerged. It had a major impact on the course of the war. Here are some highlights. Tank tactics: the use of tanks during the Civil War, from auxiliary weapon on the battlefield to main combat weapon. The National Army used the most advanced German tank, the Leopard. Similarly, the Republican Army used the Soviet Union's newest tank, the T-26. Air support in the Civil War. Air power became a key force on the battlefield. German Stukas and Italian CR-32 of the National Army shining in air combat. The Stukas pioneering dive bombing improved the accuracy of the bombs. The Stuka was a dive bomber, widely used by the Nazi Luftwaffe. First dive bombing capability, the world's first operational dive bomber, with retractable landing gear. Monoplane cantilever fighter. Second, armor defense fuselage structure, has some armor defense capability. High-strength nobelium, manganese silicon steel is used. Third, operational performance. It performed very well in the field, destroying a lot of ground targets, including vehicles, tanks, and military installations. Its distinctive siren mechanism emits a shrill, sharp cry before dropping a bomb. It gave a great psychological shock to the enemy on the ground. Fourth, in the early stages of the Second World War, it was still the Air Force that was the ground force, one of the core weapons of air support. The Italian CR-32 was a biplane, but it almost crushed the Soviet I-15. The I-16 won as a close match. The IRA used the Soviet I-15 and I-16 fighters and SB-2 bombers. These were new Soviet fighters, developed in the early 1930s. Foreign volunteers. 32,000 foreign volunteers joined the IRA in the Civil War. It became known as the International Column. It included volunteers from the United States, Britain, Canada, Australia, and other countries. Without the support of German and Italian fascists, it's hard to say who would have won or lost the Civil War. But with Germany and Italy on board, the balance of victory was clearly tipped in favor of the rebels. Then the course of the war is not in doubt. In the face of absolute power, all tricks are futile. So, the rebels are eating away at Republican territory until they've taken their base camp. It was only a matter of time before the war was over. The Civil War was of course a natural disaster plus a man-made disaster for the Spanish people. First, the Spanish flu, which did not originate in Spain, is the one that Spain is still blamed for. That was the European pandemic of 1918. It was one of the deadliest epidemics in the history of mankind. It swept the world in 1918 to 1919, infecting about 1 billion people, killed at least 25 million people. Second, the fear of the plague still lingered, but society at home was still in turmoil. Various left and right-wing groups were on the scene. Third, the Republicans lacked a star leader to unify them, and that led to internal chaos, attacks on each other and conflicts between each other, so that the government is discredited. The result was that from the very beginning of the coup, a lot of government troops turned against the enemy. Fourth, the fascists won and established a military government, not a civilian government. I'm afraid it's better for the Republicans to stay in power, at least civilian. It's better to give the people a more stable, harmonized social psychology. Fifth, Franco is a product of history, not nature. He wasn't the leader of the mutiny that started. In the army, it was San Jorge. San Jorge died before Franco could take his place, and he himself was not absolutely brilliant militarily or politically. Sixth, the growth of the rebels was also a result of the initial inactivity of the government forces, the result of the Tiger. Seventh, during World War II, despite Spain's apparent neutrality, Spain was in fact a cowardly fascist. It sent tens of thousands of volunteers to the war, to the Soviet theater to help fight the German fascists. At the end of the Spanish Civil War, the fascist world was victorious, and then the ambitions were so great that they eventually ignited the Second World War. What began as an offensive ended in the destruction of the nation. The fundamental lesson here is this: First, partial victory does not mean total victory. Second, a temporary victory is not a permanent one. And the ultimate warning is, he who plays with fire gets burned.